Hello and welcome to Dynamics Update. We are back after a couple of weeks, and now we are going to talk. Today, we're going to talk about 10.0.42, which is brand new out of the gates. And with me, as usual, is Gustav Sundblad. Hello, Gustav.
Hello, Johan. How are you today? Or this evening, to be fair.
I'm fine this evening, and it's been a couple of weeks that has been a bit tough, but otherwise it's okay. I'm fine.
I know the feeling. And now we have a shiny new version, as you said, with a lot of fancy new features to look at.
Yes, fancy new features is the thing. So I'll actually let you start this time.
Fantastic. So I basically walk through the alphabetical order here of the list of what's new. So I'm starting with finance today. And I'm not sure, have you ever worked with fixed assets, Johan?
No, I'm not really used to fixed assets.
No, me neither. I'm not a finance consultant, but I've done my fair share of migrations during the years, and so I've seen the fixed asset module from AX3 up to now, and it's been, at least from my perspective, someone else will maybe say I'm wrong here, but it has been fairly unchanged. And I asked about that, and a finance person told me, yeah, because fixed assets, it's fixed assets, it doesn't change much. But now I saw a new feature here, or a couple of features actually, for fixed assets in 10.42, which all seem to be related for performance enhancements. So that's good. So some work is going into, and I'm sure there is a lot of fancy stuff in the fixed asset module now that weren't there in 3.0. But there's a lot of processing and posting performance enhancements now, including to cover various formats, basically. So that's nice for anyone struggling with long-running jobs and tedious waiting for postings to complete.
Yes. So my first one has to do with one of my a subject where I have a love-hate relationship at the moment, and it has to do with pricing in dual write. Me and pricing in dual write at the moment is not the best of friends. We have it's complicated, as they say on Facebook. So the thing is that since I think 10.0.39 or something like that, we have a new integration for pricing when we do dual write between CE and F&O, and that means that when we set up the integration for more efficiency, I think it's called, or something like that, what will happen is that we basically disable the pricing functionality in CE, and instead we use the pricing engine in F&O. And at the moment it's the old pricing engine. You have taught me that there are a lot of pricing engines, so you need to know which pricing engine you are talking about. But at the moment it's the old pricing engine. But what actually happens is that when you create a quote, or a sales order for that matter, and you click on there is a button called price order, I think, or price quote. When you click on it, it actually connects to F&O in real time and talks to the pricing engine, to the API, and says, I would like this customer to have this many of this product. And then we go through the pricing engine and get the price back for each line and for the total quote. Which is dependent on sales agreements and trade agreements and discounts and whatever. And if we don't have any of those, then we get the base sales price back and so on. But that is a bit time consuming, because when we click the button, it takes 20 seconds to price the quote, which is a boring thing to do.
It's not near real time.
It's near real time, depending on the perspective, so to speak.
Yeah.
But what happens now is that the new feature that we have, which is called seamless sync, what it actually does is that it syncs the pricing in the background during the time that you create the quote. So it actually talks to the pricing engine, I would guess, I'm guessing, per line, and gets like each line, and then it actually calculates each line and so on. So you don't have to press the button calculate price quote anymore.
Okay, it's kind of like McDonald's. They start preparing your order until even before you actually checked it out.
Yes,
to save some time.
Yes, actually, something like that,
Yeah.
which is really good. Because I mean the whole point of the pricing engine is to create a situation where we don't have multiple pricing logic implementation. We have one, which is the master, and that one is the one we talk to. And if we do that, we don't want to have a bad user experience, especially not for the people sitting in CE who has been used to local price lists that are really, really snappy.
Yeah, again, it's interesting with perspective, because I think in the end, what anyone wants to avoid is a bad customer experience with different pricing depending on different channels. And I think that's unfortunately, as you say, like a love-hate relationship. I have the same, but with all the pricing engines, as you mentioned, the commerce engine and the trade agreements and all that stuff. It's all been complicated. So it's a good segue over to my next feature, which is the public preview of the unified pricing. So this is a complicated topic, and I think, Johan, we're trying to aim to have a separate pod about that one, because it's a big area of change. But what the feature is basically, it's the public preview of what is called unified pricing, and which is a kind of a combination, I think, of pricing management and the commerce. A lot of changes has gone into in development of the pricing story within F&O. As you say, previously you had only B2B trade agreements, and then you had commerce engine, CSU, with the more cart-based discounts. But it's the elevator pitch here is basically combining those two into a framework. And I played around with it, and it makes a lot of sense to have one engine that combines the best of two worlds. You can actually be more flexible. You can also build a monster, a nightmare in rules here. So I think it's safe to say that it's like tread with caution, but it is in public preview, and I think it's absolutely worth mentioning, because the trade agreements, if I understand this correctly, at least the trade agreements will go away. But I mean, that's there is a transition, and pricing management kind of, if you're using trade agreements today and you don't have fancy, complicated discounts, it will work pretty much exactly the same. So I mean, there's no big fear here. It's just that if you want to, you can really build this monster with, like, if it's raining outside and the sun is at its peak, then do this price and then calculate off. Well, not that really, but you could theoretically build a very complicated monster. So I'm giving you some more frustration, perhaps, in your dual right scenarios here, because if it takes 20 seconds to calculate out the current engine, and if you have all of these rules, you see, it might be more complicated.
Yes, hopefully it's more performant as well. So hopefully it evens out. More functionality, same performance in the end, and I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as the databases and the price tables don't explode, then we are all happy.
Yes. Yes. So my next one is actually something that comes not from F&O in the beginning. For a long while, we've had something in Microsoft Teams called adaptive cards. And the thing with adaptive cards is that it's, I would say it's an open source standard for creating like a information card of some kind. We can design it from a framework, and it's you can reuse it in basically any kind of environment. And what we will get here is that we will get a control that you can use from X++ to actually embed an adaptive card. So it's basically a design of an area that looks in a certain way. It could be a card of a person, it could be a card of a product, it could be something else. I think, I'm not really sure here because I haven't tried it, because I looked at it today, that you can actually use external data for this as well. So you can use it to embed external data from the outside, and then you can actually reuse the same card in Teams, in F&O, in I don't know exactly if it's available in CE, but yeah, it's a design card. It's a design element that you can reuse.
Yeah, exactly. It's a new design. It's kind of reminiscent of the fact box, like some little area that combines. But I think if I understand correctly, the adaptive card, the whole point is that it's similar across platforms, right? And what they've done here is to allow you to add a button to open an adaptive card in any form, basically.
Exactly. It's not native to FNO. It's just
No,
implemented it and you are able to use it within FNO. That's the difference.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you have a kind of a KPI scorecard in a nicely designed pattern fashion.
Yes,
Then you could possibly add it to your customers, for instance.
Yes.
Just throwing out an example here. But yeah, it took me a while to understand because I haven't worked with it before. So it took me a while to understand that one as well. What is it? Is it nice to just, you still need to build it.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the good thing about it is that it's the design will be the same regardless of platform if implemented correctly. Then.
Yes, absolutely. So back to you.
Yeah, so I'm going back to finance. I haven't had a chance to play around with this, but I know financial tags are the newest and coolest for all the finance people to tag your transactions. They are simpler. I mean, from a framework perspective than financial dimensions. They are not like as intrusive as the dimensions might be. And there is a rule set, like a defaulting rule. So this is a preview feature as well. But you can define rules for various transactions to automatically tag them. And I think that makes a lot of sense. If you have a lot of external systems sending in transactions, then yeah, sure, you could tag them when you import them. But there's like a flexibility here to define a set of rules to automatically tag your transactions, be it from vendor or from customer. You can set it up across, and you can apparently also copy these rules across different and as well as compatible transaction types. So it allows you to take away some of the work. I think the key that when I'm reading the release notes lately, at least, I think the key here is a lot of automation possibility, at least. So look into the default. If you are using the financial tags and you spend a lot of time entering them, then maybe look into the defaulting rules to see if you can take away some of that work.
Yep. All right. So my next one has to do with supply chain. It's actually part of the product management module, and it has to do with renumbering items or renaming items, because that hasn't been really a good experience before. What will happen now is that you get support for this, and there is also a logging process. So if you, for instance, decide that you are going to do renaming of items, you don't just have to just tell everyone that we are doing renaming of items, and yeah, we have a binder here on the side where you can look and try to figure out what the old item number was.
Yeah,
there will actually be a history of item numbers, so you can go back and see, yeah, you did order this item before, it's now called this, but it's the same one. So
exactly, and that's really great, and that's good that you raised it, because I actually missed that one when I read through the release notes, because it's being used. I think a lot of people have used it when you made an error, so you incorrectly created, then you used kind of the sys rename functionality, the built-in, which has no tracking. So you have no way of knowing that this item has now changed to this item. So for tracking purposes, there is a lot of customized solutions out there that kind of does a lot of automation, but it looks nice. So I want to really look at it, because we do have a lot of supersessions and replacement scenarios happening out there, where for reasons people change item numbers, vendors, and you need to be able to update them.
Yeah, I would say that having like change logging, all in all, there are too few things that are being logged, I would say, in the system. I would really like us to have more like tracking of who did what to this thing.
You would be a great auditor, Johan. More logging for the people.
Yeah, that's why I love source control. So
yeah.
Back to you, Gustav.
Yeah, so I have some more finance related. I'll just take both of those. Two small things, but I noticed them because I've run into problems with both of them, to be honest. One is the it's a feature to skip the validation for tax exempt numbers. Johan, you also work a lot with migration and like copying templates between companies and having the sequence in order because this field requires that. And let's not go into dual right enabling. You know that as well, that you have to do it in a specific order in order to not get errors because this field is expected and so forth. This is just a very, very small part. It's a tax exempt number, but the feature will allow you to create a customer without validating for that tax exempt number actually being in the linked table, related table. So it might in specific scenarios help you out because you might want to do that first, and then you might want to import it later on, or you might want to ease up on your customer creation because you want to segregate those things. So it's just a small little thing, but I raised it because it might help if you have these issues. So you can prevent the tax exempt numbers from being validated, basically. It's a feature, so you need to enable it. It might, of course, be automatically enabled in the future. The other one is also a small thing for anyone using SEPA payments. Also, I was going to say niche, but it's not. It's used all over Europe. But everyone, as with standards, we've talked about this before, everyone has their own standard, so and it also varies between banks within the same company, which is just horrible, but that's how it is. So you will have different requirements on different fields, and for this one it's an end-to-end ID field. It's basically what you keep in the payment file to track it when you receive the return file back from your bank. You use this end-to-end ID, and the feature here allows you to use the electronic payment number instead of I think the default is like a Rec ID combination of a voucher or something. So it might help to avoid, if you don't have custom ER formats, it might help you to look into this parameter if you have that specific requirement. So I think it's a parameter that you just switch on, and it's nice because if they see, I'm guessing this is because you see a lot of requirement for it. So instead of forcing everyone to customize their ER formats, you can use this parameter instead to switch it out, which is nice.
Yes, that's really cool. So my next one has to do with enhanced production floor execution interface. The reason why I brought this up is that I talked to one of our colleagues a while ago, and she was a bit annoyed of the fact that they had deprecated the old production floor interface and replaced it with a new one. And apparently the old one was much, much better than the new one. So that's why she was a bit annoyed. But I'm guessing that they are actually making up for that and trying to create feature parity with the old one. I probably think they had some kind of a technology reason for deprecating the old one and moving into the new one. But what will happen now is that they will add a feature for workers to adjust material consumption, batch and serial numbers, and license plate directly from the interface. So that means that they don't have to ask someone else to do it from F&O. They can do it directly from the production floor interface.
Okay, makes sense. And I think that like the old one was better than the new one. That's said 2 weeks before each go live ever. So
yes,
probably some adjustment, but yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's always frustrating to have to wait for, if it's within my process, I don't want to either switch systems or I don't want to move to or ask someone else to do it. So it makes sense.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. My next feature is actually not an F&O feature, so it's interesting to see it listed on the release notes. But it's, of course, it's Copilot related, and it's listed as a feature. It's called Customized Conversational Help provided by Copilot, adding knowledge to generative help and guidance with Copilot. So I'm not sure if they've flicked the switch somewhere underneath the hood that I didn't know of, but when you log on to Copilot Studio in your environment, you do have the sidecar Copilot already there, right? And you can add knowledge to it. And I thought you could do that before as well, and I've tried it out, so I'm not sure if this is actually a feature that you need to enable, but it's really cool because you can actually add whatever types of knowledge. There is graph connector to DevOps I tried playing around with, so you could actually, from within F&O, you can ask questions about DevOps, PBIs, and projects. I haven't been able to crawl through repos yet. I'm looking into that to see if that, like, it might help to what customizations or what PBIs are related to this process I'm currently in, and so forth. So you can ask questions to Copilot based on where you are right now in F&O. And it can go through a number of knowledge sources. Dataverse is another knowledge source where you can actually go. So if you have dual write or if you have CE, then you can absolutely add a lot of knowledge to your generative help and guidance with Copilot. But it's not really an F&O like feature. It's just something that you can expand on the Copilot, because as it is with like built in, it's still not super cool, to be fair. It's like you can get a lot of help, but it goes through like learn material and tells you how to work in the system. And the more you can tweak that Copilot into your knowledge, I think then it's really a game changer.
Yeah, I actually know one of the ISVs that I'm working with who has they have added their entire manual to the Copilot as a source of knowledge. So you can actually ask Copilot not only for questions that have their answer on Learn, but also questions that this ISV want their end users to know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's really cool. I mean, Copilot in itself is super cool. That's my new favorite plaything. I'm calling them my Pokemons because I'm leveling them up with different different knowledge and custom APIs. It's really cool. But like the sidecar experience within F&O has to be a bit enabled. That then you can use this knowledge to kind of really guide you into guide the user at least into relevant source material. So that's really cool. It doesn't require you to do a deploy or anything in F&O. You just need to work with your Copilot.
Yes. All right. So the next one is actually a finance feature, and it's called prevention of duplicate invoices. And it has to do with invoices, free text invoices. They have enhanced the UI where you are able to figure out if you have duplicate invoices, if you by mistake sent a duplicate invoice to a customer, for instance. So it's basically just the UI change that makes it easier for the people looking into invoices.
Okay, very nice. All right, so I have a couple of small ones. Well, actually, one is pretty big, but it's the commerce, the new transaction grid. You can actually enable the new enabled modern transaction grid in POS. There's like a refreshed transaction grid and more from a performance and fancy view perspective, where you can boost efficiency with what we call modern store commerce workflows. So it's a UI enhancement where you can actually try to rebuild and make it more efficient for your POS workers to kind of only see what they need to see in the correct order and so forth in a specific workflow pattern. It's really cool. But the other one for commerce that I wanted to raise is the possibility to purge commerce transactions. And that's from a data saving perspective, a database storage perspective is really interesting. There are scenarios where you don't necessarily need to save all the transactions. There's already some cleanup processes for compressing like payment tokens, the large card payment or payment blobs that take up a lot of storage in your database. So that can save you some space, but here you can actually purge the entire transaction. And it can be useful if you have already posted them. I'm not sure about the legality here. It might vary between countries, how long you actually need to save it. But in the majority of cases, I think the commerce transaction in itself, as long as it's exported to data warehouse and is committed and is posted financially, you need to check whether or not you can purge it. But from Dataverse costs and storage costs, all of these possibilities where you can minimize the amount of data you actually need to store in your primary production ERP makes a lot of sense. And up until now, at least, you've only had a possibility to compress parts. You could not delete them. So now you can purge. I'm not sure that there's no mention here of like a built-in timeline of how old you can actually delete, but I will look into it.
I know that there is a limitation when it comes to archiving and purging right now, since it's still sort of in preview-ish. That is a limit of the amount of lines that you can have at the moment.
Yeah.
So if you have a really, really big table, we are talking like 500 million lines or something like that, then you probably need to like wait for a little while because it hasn't been validated, or you need to put in a support call to Microsoft and ask them to change the limit for you.
And exactly, and this particular feature doesn't say anything about archiving. So this is just purge, just delete it. We don't want to archive it. We don't want to. So I think if you're going to purge it, it would make sense to ensure that you've at least saved them somewhere, just for prudence here. But I don't think it's related to the archiving feature and the archiving functionality. That's something else, at least not how I read it. So I'm going to try it out to see, because I do have a scenario actually where we want to purge commerce transactions. We don't need to save them. So
okay,
if that works.
Yeah. So my last one has to do with exchange rates and currency re-evaluation. So it's an improvement here where you can actually it makes it easier to do the re-evaluation of currency exchange rates. Also one of these small changes that are good to know.
Yeah, but I love the small ones, because they are. I mean, we think they're small, but there are so many people out there that see this little thing coming and say, "Oh, that just makes my work day a little bit better." And I think that's it's very nice to see these continuous enhancements and improvements coming in. And many of them are based on ideas where people raise, and I want to see this implemented, and then they get uploaded. So that's something we can maybe do a shout out of as well, to use the ideas, because I know it's not going to be in the production system next week. But if you can live with it, but you just find that it could be improved, and raise an idea, and if enough people vote on it, it might get into the backlog. There are cases of that, so makes a lot of sense. I just want to add as my last point as well, some inventory visibility features that we've talked about before, but they are now in GA. So it's a number of features that are going into GA. There's an inventory adjustment offset and the inventory adjustment posting features that have now gone from public preview to GA. So use them if you want to.
Yes, that's cool. So I think that's it for today. I think we'll have to get back to you at the later point with more information about the release waves, and we have a couple of interviews lined up as well, which is going to be really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Release Wave 2 is still reading through that PDF, but there's a lot of automation features, so we'll do a separate one on that.
Yes. And with that, thank you for this time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.